Thank you, Nicole, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight for our March Matchness event. I'm going to introduce my play and my actors in just a second, but I want to start off by saying that I am indebted to the Center for Women's History and Leadership in Evanston, Illinois, and particularly Archivist Janet Olson, who I believe is joining us tonight. Hello out there, Janet. I want to thank Janet. There she is. Wave. You can wave, Janet. Yay. Thank you. This group provided foundational research for my one-act play, and they have this wonderful digital exhibit on their website called Truth Telling: Frances Willard and Ida B. Wells. And now, cast, please, will you log on so I can introduce you? Here's my cast. My cast for Ida B. Wells, I'm sorry, for Ida V. Frances, the very public feud of Ida B. Wells and Frances Willard. We have Irenka Jakubiak reading Frances Willard and Soyini Crenshaw reading Ida B. Wells. And now they're going to log off while I read a bit of an introduction. I am reading the stage directions, and we'll start with an introduction. My play, Ida v. Frances, the very public feud of Ida B. Wells and Frances Willard, depicts the meeting of two very influential women in late 19th century America. Frances Willard is the president of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and at the time, it is the world's largest women's organization. Frances's tireless crusade against alcohol will eventually lead to the passage of prohibition. Ida B. Wells is a famous investigative reporter, editor, first woman newspaper owner in the United States, and anti-lynching crusader. Ida knows that together, they would have been unstoppable. But when she tries to make Frances a stronger ally, to see things her way, well, I'll let her tell you.
The scene is London, 1893. Tomorrow, I am addressing the British Women's Temperance Association. I have been asked to come and tell them about a topic of utmost importance to our Christian civilization, the horror of lynching. Sharing the speaker's platform with me is Miss Frances Willard, renowned leader of America's Women's Christian Temperance Union, the largest women's organization in the world. Like Miss Willard, I am on a holy crusade. She fights against the effects of alcohol on women and children. I fight an even greater crime against an entire race of people. My name is Ida B. Wells, and I am here to speak truth to power.
I am Frances Willard. I am a friend to the Negro people. My parents were abolitionists. I was born an abolitionist. So far as I know, I have not an atom of race prejudice. For me, the color of the heart and not of the skin settles a human being's status. And I speak for all women of good character who believe, nay, know, that the biggest problem the world faces today has nothing to do with the race issue. It is the drink, alcohol, that is ruining our civilization. If you doubt it, just ask those who are devastated by demon rum, wives beaten by drunken husbands, children left to starve by fathers who would rather drink a week's wages than put food on the table. The villains of the alcohol industry are profiting by tearing families apart.
I am a journalist. I have documented and written countless articles about the national terrorism that goes by the name of lynching. I have spoken at churches, clubs, and civic organizations in my own country, yet nothing changes. Now, here in England, I hope to spur my listeners to action. This is personal for me. I lost my dear friend Tommy Moss to lynching. Tommy was a fine, upstanding citizen of Memphis, a family man, a businessman. Tommy became the proprietor of a grocery store here in the Black part of Memphis. His store was more successful than the white-owned store across the street. So the owner of that store rallied his friends not just to intimidate Tommy, but to torture and kill him and his business partners. I see some of you doubt my story. Indeed, I find that many question my assertions until I show them photographic evidence, until I read them the eyewitness accounts penned in celebration of such barbaric acts. But even then, doubters remain. If this is a problem of such magnitude as you say, surely America's Christian leaders, by which they mean our white Christian leaders, would ring the alarm. I can assure my audience that these leaders not only ignore the problem, they exacerbate it.
As you know, I am in the business of protecting God's children from the evils of alcohol. Recently, our hopes have been dashed in several towns of the American South. Better whiskey and more of it has been the rallying cry of the great dark-faced mobs of the southern localities. In more than one jurisdiction where it was on the ballot, the local option to prohibit selling of alcohol was defeated. And by whom? By the colored vote. I marvel that these people even have the vote. Do they deserve it? I think not. It is not fair that the plantation Negro who can neither read nor write, whose ideas are bounded by the fence of his own field and the price of his own mule, should be entrusted with the ballot. If no Negroes voted, we would have our prohibition.
Yes, she actually said that to an interview from the New York Voice in 1890. When I read this, I was outraged for myself and for my people. Because the truth is that the Afro-American is not a bestial race. And yet, our good white Christian leaders, like Miss Willard here, seem to think we are. I find wherever I go that we, the Afro-American people, are deprived of sympathy because the world believes Negro men are the spoilers of the virtue of white women. Of course, that is completely untrue. Yet Miss Frances Willard and other Christian leaders have published utterances in confirmation of this slander.
We are good people. We love all God's children and want to protect the vulnerable and powerless from the evils of the world.
Bless her heart. Miss Willard's words, I could not forget them, could not let them go. She harmed us by her words and ignored the violence plaguing my race. I decided she would ignore us no longer. I arranged to have her dreadful interview published here in London to be distributed right after the convention that we are about to attend. It is now the eve of the convention. Tomorrow, she and I are to share the speaker's platform. I found myself at an elegant reception in the home of Lady Somerset. We meet for the first time. Two American women deeply, fervently committed to causes larger than ourselves, who are also both women of refinement, as you shall see. Miss
The scene shifts to their first meeting.
Miss Willard, it is indeed an honor to meet you. I have long admired the work of you are doing on behalf of the women of this world.
Miss Wells, it is a pleasure to meet you. You are making quite a name for yourself with your writings on the issues of the day. I understand that you are very popular in the Black press.
It means a great deal that a leader of your stature has been following what I have been able to accomplish.
I'm so glad that we've had a chance to speak. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say on the convention stage tomorrow. Now, if you will excuse me.
Before you go, I would like to, Miss Willard, on behalf of America's Negroes, I would respectfully ask you to retract your characterization of our men as being lustful, lewd, Lazy, stupid, predisposed to liquor, and too stupid to cast a ballot.
What? Why do you say
I
this?
am referring to this interview.
Oh. I gave that interview years ago, and we have since changed our position. Indeed, last spring, we, the Women's Christian Temperance Movement, Union, passed a resolution saying, we denounce lynchings, burnings, and torturings of our fellow citizens for any crimes.
There are no crimes here. Innocent Black men are by far the highest percentage of lynching victims. The crimes of which they are accused, dishonoring a white woman or cheating a white man, have no basis in reality. There are no facts to back any of these false accusations up. To the contrary, many of the white women who accuse Black men of lascivious behavior have themselves consented to these relations. When their men folk find out, however,
But I was told.
what you were told were racist lies. I have seen the truth for myself. I have traveled to these lynching sites. I have investigated, done the research, written the books. I will send them to you.
If what you say is
It
true,
is.
then I must conclude I was misled, influenced by women I thought were my friends. How can I right this terrible wrong?
You must publicly retract your accusations. Assure other white Christians that Negroes are not a depraved race. Work to help us live free from terror as you do.
I will consider how best to do it. Thank you for helping me see the subject of lynching as I have never seen it before.
Miss Willard was the personification of kindness. With her as my ally, it would surely be easier to get an anti-lynching bill in front of Congress. The next day, I am at the convention of the British Women's Temperance Association. Much to my surprise, I discover my speaking time has been cut in half. How odd. And Miss Willard does not speak to me or even make eye contact. Perhaps she is not a friend after all. Also, it hits me like a thunderbolt that the reprint of her 1890 New York Voice interview comes out later this week. I arranged for it to be published before we met, and now I have some regret. There's nothing I can do to stop it. So I will just wait and see. In truth, she has never denied those words, and now she will have to defend them.
Frances speaks to the press.
I am sorry that Miss Wells has caused this interview to be republished here in England. I fear it may injure her mission. As for me, I have never condoned, much less defended, any justice against colored people. In the interview in question, I was merely repeating what I had been told by the best people in the South. If this be untrue, then their well-nigh universal testimony is not worthy of credence.
Universal testimony, she said? How is it universal? Did she ask any Black people what they thought on the subject? No. She only listened to one side of the story. From the best people, she says, who feel no responsibility whatsoever in stopping this terror.
Hers is an unfair characterization of my position.
You see, reputation is what is important. I do not have the luxury to care about my reputation when the life of my people is at stake. A few months later, I encounter her again in passing just before she takes the floor at her WCTU convention in Cleveland. Miss Willard, you are looking well.
Miss Wells, I am glad you are here. You and your anti-lynching crusade has been the subject of much discussion among my membership this past year.
Indeed.
You have made an impression. I am going to speak on that topic this very day in my presidential address.
Well then, I shall take my seat.
Beloved sisters, years ago, when we began the dangerous operation of dissecting out the alcohol nerve from the body politic,
Of course, she must begin with the liquor problem. But as I sit there listening, I allow myself to feel rare sensation. Hope.
some years ago, I gave an interview where I said that in the South, the colored men's vote was a reason for the defeat of temperance. Furthermore, I said that the outrages perpetuated by them upon white women and little girls were a cause of constant anxiety. And I still believe this to be true. An average colored man, when sober, is loyal to the purity of white women. But when under the influence of intoxicating liquors, he becomes a most dangerous character. Now, Miss Ida B. Wells, a bright, young colored woman whose zeal for her race has clouded her perception, has made some statements I disagree with. These statements, concerning white women taking the initiative in shameless acts, has put the imputation upon half the white race. That this is unjust and wholly without foundation is the unanimous opinion of the best people whom I have consulted. And I urge Miss Wells, as a friend, to banish from her vocabulary all such allusions before she does further damage to her cause.
I see. The influential Miss Willard has just used her considerable platform to call me a liar. Sometimes it is hard to trust these good Christian women. But because she has the ear of thousands in America, and as she reminds us in every speech, knows the best people, I decide to keep up the pressure because it has begun to work. I asked my dear friend Frederick Douglass to write to her. I am sure he can make her see reason.
My dear Frederick, we have been friends for a long time, and I have always counted on your support in my battle to weaken the iron grip of alcohol on our society. So I am pained that you do not seem to realize the difficulty in which I have been placed by this issue of a lynch law. I am trying desperately not to stir up a hornet's nest of trouble in my Southern chapters, but it seems I have no choice. I must confront those hornets head on. And so, at our next national convention in Baltimore, I am going to propose this resolution. We repudiate any imputation inconsistent with the laws of Christ, which is totally at variance with torture or killing of any human being without opportunity to have his case fairly presented and to be treated by a jury. And we believe when women have a share in making laws, such atrocities will disappear from the face of the earth.
Miss Willard's resolution made a strong anti-lynching statement, and it passed in Baltimore. Some of the controversy died down, though she still allowed chapters in the South to remain segregated. She lived 3 more years. She died before her prohibition became national law in 1919, 1 year before women got the right to vote. And to give credit where credit is due, as she continued crusading for temperance, she urged more and more action on anti-lynching laws, calling upon Congress to pass an appropriate bill outlawing it once and for all. She would even use statistics from my investigations to walk back her lie that lynching was ever justified. I suppose that was her version of an apology. It was the most she ever gave me. As for me, I continued to fight against lynching my entire life. And Congress finally did pass a tough anti-lynching law, though I did not live to see it. They passed it in 2022, 91 years after my death. 2 years earlier, in 2020, I was awarded a posthumous Pulitzer Prize for what the committee called my outstanding and courageous reporting on the horrific and vicious violence against African Americans during the era of lynching. They say my refusal to let that story die gave lawmakers the facts they needed to finally get the job done. My name was Ida B. Wells, and I spoke truth to power.
End of play.